Hello, welcome to Code Rhetoric with Tam Talk. In this segment, we will be discussing ICD-10 Coding Guidelines, Other versus Unspecified. Today, we'll be focusing on Section 1, which consists of the conventions, the general coding guidelines, and chapter-specific guidelines. Number 9, focusing on A and B. So, other and other specified. So, Section A in ICD-10 Coding Guidelines, other is defined as codes that are titled other or other specified are for use when the information in the medical record provides details for which a specific code does not exist. So in our alphabetic index entries with NEC, also known as not elsewhere classified, in the line, designate other codes in the tabular list. These alphabetic index entries represent the specific disease entities for which no specific code exists, so the term is included within an other code. Layman's terms. The doctor provides a more specific diagnosis code. However, there is not a specific diagnosis code that fits that particular diagnosis. So in this case, you would designate to your other specified code as your ICD-10 or diagnosis code for that encounter. So in Section B, we're focusing on the unspecified. So your unspecified codes are defined as those codes that are titled unspecified. And these are for use when the information in the medical record is insufficient to assign a more specific code. For those categories for which an unspecified code is not provided, the other specified code may represent both other and unspecified. Layman's terms. The doctor may not provide a specific diagnosis code, or details are not specific to a diagnosis code. So in this case, when you go to look up your diagnosis code and there is not a specified code assignment for that diagnosis, you are to revert to your unspecified diagnosis code. So in our coding example, we're going to use abdominal pain. I like abdominal pain because it has a variety of the other specified, the other, as well as unspecified. So for those of you who are new to coding, or those of you who are in coding or don't know about coding, well, in coding, there are 4 quadrants for the abdomen. You have your upper right, your upper left, your lower right, and your lower left. And typically, if a provider is a good documenter, he or she will specify which quadrant they're focusing on. So in our first scenario, scenario A, we're going to focus on the other specified. So the diagnosis is the diagnosis that the provider has assigned to the patient's encounter, which is the right upper abdominal pain. So for those of you who want to follow along in your ICD-10 book, I provided the book steps to guide you to that specific diagnosis code in your alphabetic index. So you would go to pain, then you would go to abdominal or abdomen, then to upper, and then to right. Hopefully, if you follow those steps, it should get you to ICD-10 code R1011, again, or R10.11, which represents the right upper quadrant pain. So we're assigning that ICD-10 code because, again, the doctor did specify that the abdominal pain was in the right upper quadrant. Okay, so in the explanation, the healthcare provider did specify the type of abdominal pain, and since there is a specific code in our ICD-10 book for that diagnosis, that should be the code that you select or assign for that particular encounter. So in scenario B, the other, our provider diagnosed the patient with other abdominal pain / tenderness / generalized. So the slashes represent what the other abdominal issue could be. Not that all of those things are the diagnosis for the patient. I just backslashed it so to give you an idea of what other abdominal issues could be assigned to the patient. So in your book steps, you will go to pain, abdominal, and other descriptor. So hopefully, again, if you follow those steps, it should get you to the ICD-10 code R10.8 or R10.8, which is your other abdominal pain. If you notice with this particular ICD-10, I left a dash in the 5th digit placeholder. The reason for that, because R10.8 gets you to the neighborhood of the other abdominal issues, but because those issues could vary, that 5th digit is going to determine or confirm what the actual issue is, or in other words, what the actual diagnosis is for that encounter. So it is important that you pay attention to the details, because within the details of that note, it's going to tell you exactly what the issues are in the particular abdominal area. And so once you find that particular issue, that's what you're going to use, or that digit is what you're going to use for that 5th placeholder. And so then that will confirm your code. If you do not assign a 5th digit, then your encounter is not coded to the highest specificity. So it's important to pay attention to your placeholders for your ICD-10 codes. It could range up to 7 digits. So in this case, it's only 5. So it's important, again, to pay attention to the details within the note to confirm what that 5th digit should be. So in the explanation, the healthcare provider specified a different type of abdominal pain, or abdominal issue. And in this case, it is important to pay attention to the details in the provider notes. Your missing 5th digit should confirm the specified code for the diagnosis. Once you have determined that, it is appropriate to assign that code or select that code for your diagnosis or for that encounter. So in scenario C, we have our unspecified. Again, the doctor assigned abdominal pain as the diagnosis for the patient. So in our book steps, we're going to go to pain and then go to abdominal. Hopefully, your ICD-10 should land you at R10.9 or R10.9, which represents the unspecified abdominal pain. Again, our doctor did not specify the type of abdominal pain. He didn't specify if it was other abdominal issues. The final diagnosis is or was abdominal pain. So in this case, this is unspecified. So in our explanation, the healthcare provider did not specify the type of abdominal pain. And since there is an unspecified code for the diagnosis, you should select it. Now, there may be some coders who disagree with this particular scenario, as in they would probably query the provider or read through the note to confirm if there's a more specific diagnosis code, and they would be correct. So in that case, if you review your documentation and you were able to identify the location or the quadrant of the abdominal pain, it is important that you would assign the more specified code. In the event where it is not specified throughout that note, it is appropriate to assign the R10.9. It's just based upon how you review that note, that documentation, and what the doctor assigned to the patient. As far as querying the provider for this particular one, again, it depends on the coder and your requirements with your employer. In this case, again, if the doctor's documentation does not specify the quadrant, I would assign the R10.9, which is the unspecified abdominal pain. Again, my explanation is here, the provider did not specify the type of abdominal pain. Since there is a diagnosis code for that, I would assign it. So in our coding tips, you want to make sure you code to the highest specificity. Again, just making sure your ICD-10 code is coded all the way out. With ICD-10 codes, those codes could range from 3 digits all the way up to 7 digits. So you want to make sure you code it to the highest specificity. If the particular code that you're working with has 7-digit placeholders, it is important that it's coded out 7 digits. Again, if it's not, then you have not completed your coding in regards to your ICD-10 or your diagnosis code. If it is unclear, if the documentation is unclear, it is important to query the healthcare provider for clarification. You also want to pay attention to the details within the note. And actually, I should have placed the pay attention to the details within the note prior to the query. Because here's the thing, you want to make sure you've reviewed the notes in full, in detail, to see if you're able to grasp the needed information to code the particular encounter to the highest specificity. In the event that you have done so and it's still unclear, that would be a prompt for a query to the healthcare provider. And always, again, always read or be ready, but definitely read your coding guidelines for instructions. So this concludes our segment on ICD-10 coding guidelines, other specified versus unspecified. To learn more about medical coding, please subscribe to our website at www.abrahammedicalcodingcoachllc.com. We also have a blog titled What's the 411 with Coding? And you can also contact me personally via email at abrahammedicalcodingcoach@gmail.com.